Sissel and Burse. I mentioned in my newbie tag that I like to read comics, so I thought I'd give you a rundown of what's on my pull list. I literally just got like my new set of comics shipped to me today, so like the issues I'm gonna like show the cover for are out of date, but I think the general point still stands. Fun fact, I get my comics from Amalgam Comics. They have a mail order subscription, and I just really like their business. And they invite a lot of authors and illustrators for comics, like come in and do events and interviews and stuff. And if I'm lucky, sometimes like my comic won't have shipped out while like the event is going on, and sometimes I can get my stuff signed without actually having to go to the event. Fun fact. I'm just gonna go through in alphabetical order, tell you name of the comic, the author, premise of the book, and sort of my thoughts on it so far. So first up is Hassel Whispers by Nilo Hopkinson. It's based in the Sandman universe, which I think is a series of books by Neil Gaiman, which I have not read. And it's about this goddess Erzulie, who lives in a celestial realm of sorts until one day she's like thrown out of it into this other realm called the Dreaming, which I don't understand quite. I think like if I'd read the Sandman books, I would understand it more. But from what I can gather, it is like a collection of like figures and characters and places that humans like either like venerate. So there's like biblical characters there, or tell stories about. Like there's also folk tale characters there. And while she's in the Dreaming, she's like losing her power and sort of losing her sense of self. Like there's different iterations of Erzulie, and she's kind of like shifting through them while she's in the Dreaming. And while that's going on, there is a mysterious plague being spread around the earth. Humans' bodies are leaving their souls and going to the Dreaming, and when this happens, they think they're dead. Like they lose sensation and they act in sort of irrational ways. And there is one human in particular who is spreading the disease on purpose because it makes her feel alive. So in terms of what I thought about it, for the first 3 issues, I thought it was kind of slow. Like I wasn't really learning stuff or like seeing stuff that I didn't already know would happen just from the premise of the book. So that was kind of disappointing. But after like that 3-issue mark, it like picked up and I enjoyed it a lot more. Like we finally get some interaction between the human characters and the celestial characters. And I enjoyed that. I thought it made for some good action. I really like, I guess, like the patient zero, like the first human who was infected, the one who's like spreading the disease now. She's just like very creepy, I think. And I think like the way that she spreads the disease, she kind of has like a little phrase that she says, that's her MO. I think that's like cool, and I appreciate that. So on the whole, I like this series. I'm gonna see where it goes. Next up is Ironheart by Eve Ewing. Ironheart features Riri Williams, and I believe she was first created like 2 years ago in the Invincible Iron Man comics, which I have not read. It's kind of a common theme through some of these picks is that they're like solo series for characters, and I have not really read the main series that they're like spinning off from, so something to keep in mind. In this book, Riri Williams is in Chicago. Her best friend has recently died, and she's kind of trying to cope with that and come to terms with that. And like while like all this emotional turmoil is going on, there's a spate of robberies and also like kidnapping / disappearances, and she's like, I'm at the point where she's just kind of starting to like, a villain has emerged, and she's kind of starting to be like, oh, this is fishy, like where do I go from here? I like it a lot. I like the pacing, I like the energy, and I really like Riri as a protagonist. I think she's like very relatable and very, I really empathize with her in her vulnerable moments, so I appreciate this series. Next up is Juke Joint by T. Franklin. This is a horror comic. I want to say it's set in like, I don't know exactly when, but it's probably like sometime in the 1900s in Louisiana, and it is about this like juke joint / brothel that is run by cannibal witches, and the Juke Joint has a few rules, but I think the biggest one I can remember right now is like basically keep your hands to yourself, and like if people say to leave them alone, you leave them alone, and if you break the rules, you get kicked out and you might get eaten by the cannibal witches. And this story follows the protagonist Helwa, who is in an abusive relationship. Her husband beats her, and she goes to these witches for some magic to make him stop. And we're at this point where the magic does something kind of like horrific and possibly unexpected, and she's kind of debating if she did the right thing, like figuring out what she's gonna do now. Like, is she gonna join the cannibal witches? Is she gonna try and reverse the magic? What's gonna happen next? And I'm intrigued, I think I should say. I'm like very intrigued. I really want to know where it's gonna go. This book is like very bloody and there's a lot of nudity in it. And I kind of mentioned in the newbie tag that I mostly read my stuff on the train. So like, whenever I have this out, I'm always like making sure there's no one behind me. There's no mirror showing everyone what I'm reading and what I'm looking at. But yeah, on the whole, I like it. I think it's very intriguing, and I'm like wondering what is going to happen because it's been on a break for a while. Like, it's been months, I think, since the last one came out. So I hope everyone in the art, like everyone who's making the comic, is doing okay. No one's having health problems. I'm hoping it's just like a production issue. And just a side note, I love the first cover. I think it's beautiful. I don't know if you can really see on the screen, but like I really love the texture that they put into her. I think this is Queenie, into Queenie's hair. I think it's beautiful. So that is Juke Joint. Next up is Livewire. This is a character from Livewire is by Vita Ayala. This is a character from a main series which I have not read, and her name is Amanda McKee, and her hero name is Livewire. This is a world that seems to be similar to the X-Men, where there are mutants and there are normies, and normies don't like the mutants. There are probably government roundup programs in place for the mutants, and in this series, it's unclear to me, because like I said, I didn't read the main series, but from what I can gather, in the main series, Amanda McKee, Livewire, she has the ability to control technology with her mind, and she basically shut off all power in the United States for, I think, a couple days. Either to, like, stop some sort of program that the government was doing, or to, like, make a statement against how people are treating mutants in her world. And the series is her living with the fallout of her decision. She's obviously got like government agencies after her. She has some like private hitmen after her. She's not really being well received by like her mutant friends that she kind of did this for, because they're also living in the fallout of her decision. Like, they have friends and family who were hurt by this power outage. They are facing the increased aggression from people who are afraid of mutants after this power outage. And I'm intrigued by like the questions that it raises about like, you know, justice and at what cost and things like that. I'm feeling a little distant from the main character, and I wonder if it's because I haven't read the main series, but on the whole I like it and I'm excited to see where it goes. And last but not least, we have Cherie by Nadia Korafor. I actually read Coates's The World Beneath Her Feet, so I'm actually kind of up to date on what's going on in this one. Basically, T'Challa has gone out to space, hasn't come back. When this leaves Wakanda in turmoil, Cherie's kind of trying to figure out how to fill in the gap and like what to do. And she's like gone to space to look for T'Challa, hasn't found him. And a minor villain has appeared. A space creature kind of followed her back from when she was looking for her brother, and she's trying to deal with that. And also, when Wakanda sort of revealed their disguise, like came out, was like, you know, this is what Wakanda is really capable of. A secret group of delegates from different African countries formed and were talking to T'Challa about what, you know, Wakanda's relationship to their respective countries was going to look like. And now that he's gone, they're talking to Cherie. And I really like this comic. I got into it because of the Black Panther movies. So I am enjoying the ways that it complements the movie. For example, I felt like the movie was like culturally or like aesthetically Pan-African, and that Wakanda and Wakandan culture is sort of an amalgamation of different African ethnicities and countries. And I think the idea was to sort of have little bits and pieces of different, you know, customs and clothes in there so that different people could look at it and feel elevated and celebrated when they saw the movie. But we didn't see a whole lot of Wakanda interacting with other African countries and like the adjacent countries. And it looks like we're going to get that in this comic, so that's exciting. And also, I don't know if that's really happened in the history of the comics. Like, I've really only read Coates' run, but from what I can see, Wakanda has mostly interacted with like the US and like some adversarial nations in Europe. So I'm excited to see, you know, like the political like ramifications for the neighboring countries. I think when I started like hearing about like these big name novelists writing comics, I kind of wondered, you know, like why, what's the rationale, you know, what's the transition gonna look like? But I feel like a core for writing for Marvel Comics makes a lot of sense. I don't really have a great way to describe her writing style, but I would say that she's kind of quirky. Like, I think she isn't afraid to take risks and do things that are weird, but also like fun and cool. And whenever I read something by her, I'm kind of expecting to be surprised in some way. And I think that sort of, you know, like those things fit in with the type of comics that Marvel likes to make and Marvel's like brand and image. So to me, like why a core would want to write a comic for Marvel, it wasn't really a question to me. It made a lot of sense. My favorite issue so far was, I think it's the third one, where Cherie's like in space and she's gotten transported into Groot's mind. I really like the crossover between Guardians of the Galaxy and Cherie. I mean, I had like one complaint, which was that it was a little jarring for me switching between the art styles of like the cover art and the actual art in the book. The cover art is like more, I don't really have a good word for it, but I want to say it's like more realistic. The coloring's a little, I don't have good words for it. I don't know how to talk about art, but it's more like full. And inside the coloring's a bit more flat, you know, it's less focused on like anatomy. The drawing's less focused on anatomy, it's more focused on like, you know, the poses and like conveying the energy of the characters and the motion. And like it was a little jarring for me at first, but after like an issue I got over it. And I'm glad to see that Fun Cherie is back. I mean, Cherie in the movies is fun, and in Coates' run, Cherie is a little more cold and calculating, and she's back to being Fun Cherie in these comics, so that was a welcome change. And I think that is all I have to say. If you've read any of the comics that I mentioned, and you have opinions you'd like to share, comment below. If you have any comics that you're reading that you think I'd like, tell me about them. Thank you for watching.